This episode of the Emotional Endurance Movement is dedicated to that one family member who can't get off the outrage roller coaster. These baby carrots aren't very baby. Did you see that Facebook changed? There's not enough bubble gum in the blow pops anymore. Did you see what she is wearing? Does anyone use their turn signal anymore? These baby carrots are too large. This is outrageous. Outrageous. It's outrageous. You know the one.
Oh, I know the one.
Welcome to the Emotional Endurance Movement, the only mental health comedy game show that's less interested in what you think you should feel and more curious about how you're actually doing. Each week, we name a real feeling, break down what's happening under the hood, and give you some practical skills to help you build your capacity to handle your real life while we give each other points for staying regulated in this dysregulating world. I want to take a second and introduce our perennial contestant, our behaviorist at large, and someone who actually had a good time on a girls' trip this weekend. It's Crimson McDonald. I also want to introduce you, our other perennial contestant, the viewer at home who completes our weekly survey, tells us how they're feeling, and works with us to stay regulated during these very dysregulating times. This week's feeling, outrage. And if you've been feeling a little spicy lately, you're not alone. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with our insight of the week, which comes to us from the wonderful Brene Brown. Brene says, anger is information. Brene Brown. That's right. We're talking about outrage today, not because we don't want you to feel it, but because we want you to know what to do with it. Outrage is information like any feeling, but it's not instructions. It tells us that something feels wrong, unfair, or out of alignment, but it doesn't automatically tell us what to do next. And what we do next, whether it's regulated or dysregulated, really unlocks the rest of the story. What do you think, Crimson?
As always, Brene Brown captures the moment perfectly. If you can see anger as information, you are one step ahead of the game.
Absolutely. A lot of people push this emotion away because they don't think that they're allowed to have it or that they should have it, or they just simply don't want it. Outrage and anger are not necessarily comfortable emotions. But if we can learn to really bring it into the fold and work with it and understand it and either amplify it or contain it, we can really get a lot of use and information and motivation out of these feelings. But not all outrage is created equal. In fact, there's a lot of nuance to outrage, and that's part of what you're going to see in our episode today, because some outrage was so overwhelming and disempowering that we'll often shut down and not do anything about it when we really need to be turning the volume up. And some outrage is so stupid and not worth our time, and it gets needlessly amplified, and we need to find a way to turn it down. So outrage really has these dual realities, and you won't be surprised to hear that whether or not you're regulated or dysregulated with your outrage has a big impact on how it plays out.
Outrage is addictive. It's a easy train to get on and a hard train to get off. And I see a lot of people just, and sometimes it's just the day. You just start the day on the outrage train and can't get off. But sometimes it's a mode of living and it's extremely toxic.
Now we're going to move into our emotional weather report. Crimson, I heard we have 262 members within the emotional endurance movement this week. Is that true? And how are they feeling?
That's true, Lori. We're growing for the over 260 members that took the survey. Overall, what we are seeing is that, as always, we're mixed. The regulation roller coaster is up and down. So overall, the majority of us felt like it was up and down. We were dysregulated and regulated. As we always say, that's really the standard and the norm. But this week, a lot more people reported being dysregulated than last. So it looks like I can't say we're trending in the regulated path. We're kind of going both ways on this one. Where are you holding it together and where are you falling apart? And honestly, dysregulation showing up most at home. If you look at that, family and home and caregiving is just consuming us. And that is where we are finding ourselves with our reserves empty and our threshold of tolerance very low. And so we're struggling at home right now. Definitely. That is where we are letting our dysregulation rule us. So, how are we coping? That's the biggest thing, right? Because we can't control what happens in life. It's about how we cope with it. And our metric that we call our coping effectiveness is at about 61%. What does that mean? Our capacity's there, but we're under a little bit of pressure. So hang in there, guys. We're doing pretty good. We're more effective than ineffective at our coping skills.
That's a little lower than last week, and the dysregulation was a little higher, which makes, I mean, it makes sense. People are more stressed and they're struggling to cope a little bit more. But that's definitely a dip from last week.
It is a dip. People are feeling it might be the new year is wearing off quickly. The ambition of the new year.
Yeah, the newness is wearing off, and we are in it.
We are. We are in it. So, where are we feeling the most pressure in our life? Because let's face it, that is what's driving the dysregulation. Whether or not our cup is full or empty is driven by where we're feeling the pressure. So, let's go to our top 5, starting with number 5, boundaries with work and life, which, honestly would be expected, but we still got higher on the list last week. And so it's interesting. Our little bubbles are showing more pressure at home, less at work. And we're seeing the boundaries go a little bit lower on the list this week. All right. At number 4, workload. So we are overwhelmed. We have too much work to do. That's for sure. But what is interesting is number 3, anticipatory stress. Now, I don't know about you, Lori, but when I think of this, now that we're business owners, well, I mean, our family's been business owners for decades, right? But is it Q1? Are we struggling with quarter 1? I just wonder, given our lower, sample base of, it's good for us, over 200. But I wonder if a lot of us are entrepreneurs or business owners, Q1 can be a rough time for us.
Totally. I also think there's a lot of uncertainty right now, more than usual. It seems like it's kind of exponentially growing week by week.
Yes.
And I think anytime there's that level of uncertainty, that anticipatory stress hikes up, right? Because generally speaking, uncertainty kind of feels unsafe to our brain, even though all of life is uncertain.
And honestly, uncertainty would have fallen in our top 10, so.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
All right. So coming in at number 2, we just don't have enough time. Now,
never enough time in the day.
Leave it to me to take this to an existential level. We never have enough time. So, as Lori knows, and as everyone should know, Alexander Hamilton, right? You can't wait for it. You gotta get it done. You gotta get it done.
Yeah.
There's a sense of there's never enough time at the micro and at the macro, which brings us to number 1. So if we're wondering why those family and work and life balance and home things are popping up, financial pressure, consequence of the holidays, or a consequence of Q1, or
why not both?
Why not both, right? Inflation. You name your pick. We're going to see financial pressure.
All the financial pressures you could possibly indulge in.
Yeah, this is it.
Right here in 2026.
Yeah, so hang in there, people. It's a rough time, especially those on fixed incomes or those with dependents. This week, overall, I feel like the emotional endurance movement's hanging in. As we say, it's never going to be 100% perfect. Our goal is really to stay regulated most of the time. And as we can see, we're doing a good job. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
So make sure if you are listening or watching that you subscribe and you participate in our weekly survey.
Now a word from our feeling of the week, outrage.
Outrage, like many emotions, is contagious. Unregulated outrage spreads quickly and escalates across environments. Unregulated outrage can interrupt harm, set new norms, and get whole groups of people working for something better. There's a difference between us just feeling outrage and us acting out of outrage. And we hope that through this episode, you'll see a little bit more about what we mean when I say that. When it comes to outrage, like many other feelings, we need to pay attention and decide how we best cope with it. And with outrage, there's really two paths. Are we going to tend the fire of the outrage and help us motivate us to something better, to an environment or a future that serves us better? Or are we going to contain that fire before it burns the whole house down? For our first game this week, we are playing a new game called Outrage on Ramp. This is all about those outrages in your life that can feel so overwhelming and disempowering that you honestly just kind of want to pretend that they don't exist. And we're going to take those that we experience and we're going to find ways to help amplify them in a way that feels good, meaningful, and helps us to harness the power of our outrage underneath. I'm going to start because there's been something sitting in my soul since last week that has really not felt great. Last week, I woke up to the news that hundreds of millions of dollars in mental health funding had been unceremoniously slashed overnight. People who felt that they would always have the support to continue to help the populations that they serve found themselves out of a job without much explanation. There was major uproar about this because many of us realize that neglecting to provide mental health care to those in need costs lives and it costs safety in our community. Now, I am happy to say that for some reason, within 24 hours, this plan was reversed. But there's a piece here that needs to be called out because it's not just the slashing of the budgets for mental health care. It's the uncertainty that this creates for people who utilize these services. And as we mentioned earlier in this episode, uncertainty can be a huge stressor and should make people feel that they cannot depend on the fact that their therapist will be there or that their medications are going to be filled or that they have the supportive tools that they've worked hard to learn how to integrate into their life. Harms people. It harms people greatly. In my field, it is an ethical obligation to not abandon clients. The way they slashed this budget would have meant hundreds of thousands of clients would be immediately abandoned by their therapist. They would not have that support. This is outrageous. This harms people. This makes us all less safe. And I've spent a lot of time kind of avoiding the mental health world and the business of mental health because of my own experience and stressors and challenges. But this happened and I realized that I could no longer avoid these conversations. Threatening to make cuts like this or doing so and then immediately reverse it, although I'm happy they reversed it, still does major damage to these communities and to the providers that work with these communities. These are not easy jobs to have. You need advanced education, training, and support. Being in a situation where your funding can be cut at any minute doesn't provide that level of support. So I have now decided that part of what I'm going to do to amplify this outrage is that I'm going to speak up about this. I'm going to speak up about how horrified and outraged I am. I'm going to speak up about what damage this really causes, even with the budgets being reversed. And I'm going to speak up for mental health care in this country. It matters deeply, even if you are not the one who is seeking treatment. This is an important piece of the puzzle of how we as a country get and stay well. Mental health care is a priority. And that is my outrage on ramp.
I mean, I think most people that are in our movement are going to agree with you, Lori. I mean, all of us agree. Seems like anything happens in this world or this country, and we say, well, it's mental health, and to think that we would strip that kind of access. You were in the industry. I know many people that are in the industry now, and this, to your point, is so much uncertainty to deal with. So it's worthy of the outrage. I'm with you. Well, on that point, my outrage on ramp, um, like you, this is something that we need to talk about and we should be outraged about, but we need to talk about it. So, I saw this headline recently that 99% of medical research ignores menopause and perimenopause. Now, I have to be honest as a woman, and I'm sorry, men listening and watching, we know you're out there. But this is important to know if you have women in your life. I did not know women went through basically puberty again. Like, I didn't know this was coming. And I didn't know it was coming at such a young age. And it has rocked my world unlike anything else. And all of the women my age are talking about it because it was just so young. We were like, oh, at 50 something, you go through menopause and it sucks for a couple years. No, it's like a decade long transition. Nobody's done research. We're all doing different experimental hormonal things to see if we can figure it out. But like, I really feel like we are swimming in uncharted territory. And the outrage comes from why women have been womening for as long as women been womening. And so why don't we know more about this phenomenon that happens with every single woman? And so it's outrageous. It's outrageous that it would be like doing research without considering men have more testosterone than women. It's completely absurd to think that we have neglected this very real variable. And as a result, women at this age are feeling lost. They don't know why they go from loving their life to wanting to kill their husband, but they don't have something pathological going on with them. So I want to amplify it because as this research comes out, and I think as we get talking about it more, we'll push for more research because women deserve to understand what's happening to their bodies. I'm not a scientist. Bodies gross me out, ill. I want to know. So yeah, my outrage is the lack of consideration to women's physiological changes that come with perimenopause and menopause. Women moving forward need to be open about this conversation and they need to bring men into the conversation. And we need to teach our daughters about what to expect because I don't even know if our parents talked about perimenopause. I wasn't ready for it. My husband wasn't ready for it. And it's had a huge impact on who I am and what I'm going through. And so I think everybody needs to have the conversation and to start asking your doctor for answers. I mean, my own doctor, I'm like, I have this symptom and this symptom and this symptom. Am I perimenopause? And she's like, well, based on the medical science, no, but that was done without real women because we couldn't use women in scientific medical research in enough time to really know. But as a fellow 40-year-old, hell yeah, you're in perimenopause. And that's unacceptable in modern day. Like that is, we have the ability to know more. We should know more. And the science needs to catch up. So have the conversations and push for it and advocate to feel good. You don't have to feel like crap because you're in perimenopause. Moving forward, I'm going to be having these conversations with my medical teams and with just my friends because we shouldn't be alone in this.
Absolutely. Did you know that crash test dummies are all men? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like boobs would have an impact on like
yeah, I
a
mean,
car crash situation. I could be wrong on that, but my gut tells me,
something.
yeah.
We're structurally different.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Crimson. I agree. I would like to start having more conversations. Actually, you know what? I'm actually noticing it's already happening around me. I'm hearing more women talk about perimenopause and menopause. So I agree. I think that that's an important piece of outrage to amplify and to work to move forward so that we can have these conversations. So maybe we could get some quality research done on this important developmental phase in every woman's life. Crimson. I'm going to go ahead and give you 500 points for bringing up something that is so important that really we haven't really been talking about much. And it does seem like we're talking about a little bit more, but I appreciate you bringing it to the table. So 500 big ones for you.
All right, Lori, and I am going to give you 1,000 points because you brought up one of the biggest issues in our field right now, in the orbit that we are in. We know a lot of people suffering.
Yeah, access to care is a perennial issue, and it's something that we can't ignore anymore. So thank you for the points, and I'm glad I got a chance to come on here and talk about it. I feel more empowered just by doing that. So thank you for that. Now we're going to move on to our next new game, which is called Outrage Off Ramp, where we talk about the things that have us outrage that we want to walk away from, step away from, stop the cycle, allow it to be, and get off the outrage roller coaster. Mine came to me earlier this year when I got that lovely email from my streaming providers that said, guess what? There's another increase in fees. It seems like we can't go more than 2 months without getting fee increases with our streaming services. And finally, as outraged as I was, I realized I had a choice. I had a choice. And do you know what that choice was? It was to cancel the streaming services. And I could release my outrage by doing so. And that's what I did. On January 7th, I sat in my office and I went through all of our streaming service, canceled most of them, downgraded some of them, and I'm now working with a very cranky family who doesn't understand why we don't have 50 million TV shows anymore. But I just can't do it anymore. It's just every couple of months, it's more money, more money, more money.
Yeah.
And honestly, with the way some of these companies have been acting around free speech and creative expression, it's getting a little bit on the icky side. So I felt good about getting off the outrage machine. I was proud of myself. And I remembered, because this has been going on for years, that sometimes we can forget how much power we actually have. And in this case, it was easy for me to get off the outrage roller coaster just by hitting cancel. If you feel the same way, well, I would encourage you to do it too, because honestly, it felt pretty good.
Well, Lori, I am proud of you for doing that. I prefer to stay outraged on that one because I can't let go of the service and I'm outraged with you. So thanks for standing on principle for those of us that are too weak to do so. I appreciate it. My turn. I have had a situation, and I could go into detail about the fun drama of the PTO. Ours is our parent-teacher organization, so PTA, PTO, you pick. But we had a situation that, let's just say, dysregulated some members. And it was interesting because I'm not sure everybody on the board approached it the same way I did, but it was a very clear point in my life, or in that moment. There was a very clear moment where I chose to not be outraged. What was happening was a little outrageous, but I just chose, like, it's not worth it. This is my home. This is my community. These are my people. This is one decision. This is one moment. And this is not worth the amount of energy it is taking. And what I realized is when I chose to take the path off ramp, off of outrage, I realized how ridiculous those outrage were for being outraged about it. And so, yes, this week I was very proud of being able to just put it in a box and let it go, because some things do not deserve time or energy in your life. And recognizing that, not only did it alleviate me from so much unnecessary hassle, but I still love all the people. There's no baggage. So I chose to not build baggage with people. And it's nice to know that you have the power to not be outraged about something.
Well, I am super proud of you for getting off the outrage roller coaster, especially when people around you were starting to swirl, because that is really hard to do.
Mhm.
So 2,500 points to you because dang, that was a good job, Crimson. It is really hard to do that in group situations. And I agree at a certain point, especially when we're serving with a group, we have to really evaluate what is this going to do to our equity and how does this fit into the bigger picture. And sometimes things are outrageous and we have to learn how to accept them for what they are and move through them. So good job.
Thanks. And Lori, for you, I got to be honest, I would give you more points, but the reality is you're going to go back. So right now, I will give you 500 points and we'll check back in, I don't know, 3 months. And if you are still limiting your consumption, I will give you another 500.
Okay. Fair. But I do want to say, like, we didn't go cold turkey. I mean, we still have decent
Right.
amount of streaming stuff going on. I do agree. And I am much more accepting of it than anyone in my family is. And that brings its own level of outrage to the table. So yeah, let's check back in a couple months and see how it's going.
Yeah, and by then, I'm sure I'll have had the conversation with my husband. I know it's on our agenda. So by then I will be with you. But God, isn't it crazy how you're like, I'm gonna cut the cord, and then you do, and it's like Netflix, Hulu. I mean, let's just
Oh
have this
my God.
conversation.
I was just
What do you have? Like, what
thinking about this.
services do you buy into? Like, let's just
So,
talk internet, like TV, entertainment.
we had Hulu with live TV. That's
Okay.
been cut. But we still have basic Hulu, but honestly, it's so basic. I don't know if it's gonna make it long term.
Right.
We have Netflix, but I found a way to get our Netflix account folded into our phone bill. So we still have that one, but we're not paying for it. We canceled Paramount, which was a newer ad, and was like subpar. And then we had like a couple of like we get Prime Video, which you get if you have Amazon Prime. So
Mhm.
again, like we're paying for it ish, but we had a couple of like additional channels like BBC Select or something else that we randomly gotten a trial for and forgot about, which
Right.
is classic that we got rid of. So I mean, we still, like I said, we have Netflix, we have Hulu, and we have Prime still.
That's what
And
I want to get down to. But we have
yeah,
like
I mean, like I said, I think the Hulu might go ultimately, and Disney is killing Hulu. I should say it's Hulu and Disney because we do have the Disney Channel for the kids.
yeah, because that's why. So we have, because this is where it adds up. We have Paramount, which is going. I don't even know why we have it. Peacock, which I don't know if we pay for. I don't know. My mom might. I don't think we pay for. Then we have Netflix. We have HBO. Disney, Amazon. I mean, that's like. Oh, we had
And
Stars.
still, there's
And we
nothing
had
on.
Stars, and I paid
Still,
for
there's
my
nothing
mom
on.
like every month for like 5 years. Never used it. And then Amazon switched it to where like you couldn't share your plan with family. And so I finally went and canceled like all of my subscriptions there that she was using. But yeah, so it's absurd.
Yes, it is absurd. Well, that was a fun game. Now for a word from our coping skill of the week, contain the fire. When outrage shows up, sometimes the most powerful move isn't to act, it's to contain. Containing the fire is another way of talking about compartmentalization. And despite the bad reputation it gets, this is a high skill form of regulation when used intentionally. Containing the fire doesn't mean ignoring what matters or pretending that you're not feeling that way. It means deciding when and where that energy gets your attention, your action, and your acknowledgement. Here's how it works. You mentally place the issue in a secure container, mentally, of course, a box, a file, a shelf, something you can return to later. You're not dismissing it. You're basically scheduling it. I'm going to come back to this at a later date. Maybe it's when you know more information or you're in a more supportive environment. This is especially important when you're dealing with big issues you can't solve in a single moment or reacting right now would cost you clarity, composure, or credibility. Containment creates space for regulation. Regulation creates choice for how you manage that outrage. And that choice is what turns outrage into impact instead of fallout. You're not putting out the fire necessarily. You're preventing it from burning down everything else while you figure out how to use it, how to harness it, and how to make sure you understand what's really underneath it. That's containment done well. Here's 3 quick ways to contain the fire fast. My first favorite is called Name It to Tame It. Silently label what's happening. Oh, I feel outraged. By doing so, this activates your prefrontal cortex and reduces the amygdala intensity. You're not solving anything yet. You're just stabilizing the system by acknowledging the feeling and naming it. The next thing you can do is something we do a lot in therapy, which is creating a cognitive container. You picture the issue going into that container we talked about, a box, a folder, a vault, a shelf. Tell yourself, I will return to this. You know where it is. It's kept safe within you, but it doesn't need to be spilling out all over everywhere. Your brain immediately relaxes when it knows that this information isn't being lost because it reduces the urgency of the response. And the final tip is to make sure that you work to regulate your body when this outrage happens. Do the bilateral stimulation, deep breaths, grounding, humming, any of the skills we talk about on our channel to make sure that your flight or fight doesn't get overactivated, which will cause you to react to the outrage versus respond to it. Containment isn't avoidance, it's strategic regulation. And when you're regulated, outrage becomes something that you can use, not something that uses you. That's all from our coping skill of the week, Contain the Fire. Now we're on to our last mini game. This one we're calling Once Upon a Karen. When we tell a story of a time when we didn't contain the fire and it made a mess all around us, we're going to tell the fire and then we're going to tell 3 things that we could have done to have been less of a Karen in that moment and more of a compartmentalizer.
All right, Lori. So this story happened actually right when I met you. If you recall, we lived in downtown Cincinnati at the Great Waldo. Before we met, and I think you knew this, I had a blog, a very successful blogging career that put me through college and graduate school. But it was glorious. And what I talked about was not just politics, but mostly pop culture. Now, keep in mind, I'm old. This was in the early 2000s. Paparazzi, Perez Hilton was just getting started. So it was a hobby, and I took it very seriously. So I became a weekly recapper of 2 of my favorite shows. So this affair began with Flavor of Love, which was featured on VH1. Those that are younger than us may not remember VH1, but it was a big deal. And they brought rock and roll and music and reality TV together. When MTV was still like music, they came in and said, we'll be the reality TV wing. So they started with Flavor Flav, who was a rapper from the 80s and 90s. And he's absurd and absolutely a clown. And it was a dating show. So I would spend my Monday mornings or Sunday nights writing a recap of the episodes of these shows every week. It drew a huge audience. And while I blogged constantly, I just thought everyone wanted to hear every thought I had about everything. These posts, like, this was my namesake. This was like, if you want to know what was going on with Flavor of Love, that was me. And then it turned into Rock of Love. So we live in downtown Cincinnati, and Time Warner Cable gets into dispute with VH1. And they are no longer going to carry VH1. But there is a problem with this. They're going to cut the cord on Saturday at midnight. And this finale of this glorious show, Rock of Love, the night that we are going to find out who won Bret Michaels' heart the first time. And sure enough, I get the news that Time Warner Cable is just going to stop airing VH1 content. I cannot even explain to you the rage that this inspired. I made a contract with Time Warner. They were going to deliver that VH1 to me. There was nowhere in the contract that said if we get pissed off at VH1, like that changes. And I had a lot of opinions about this. And I also had easily $26 of ad revenue wrapped up in this for that episode recap. So I am like, this $26, this is the finale. I mean, I'm not just talking like, oh, it's Sunday night and we're having girls' night and we're going to watch this. This is like the finale of a show that I've been blogging about when shows were like 22 episodes or something. Like they were constant. So I did what any person would do, which is call Time Warner. And that's always a great step forward in staying regulated, calling a cable company. Let's just say that it was embarrassing. Some of the quotes from that call, I'm just really glad they weren't captured, because there were things like my livelihood is staked on this. No, it was like $20. Let me talk to your legal team. I think I said that like twice. Like, where in my contract does it say you can change the channels at random? I think I said I was a victim several times. I mean, I don't even know. Like, I just know my husband, but then boyfriend, like, thank God he stuck with me, because I was like early in the whole process, was just like flabbergasted. I mean, he just sat there like, oh my God, I cannot believe this woman is capable of this. And you aren't going to change the world. Like, you are not going to get Time Warner to change their mind about VH1 for the entire region. But the best part was I did, Lori. Because at about noon the next day, they came to an agreement. And I got to watch the finale of Rock of Love. And I believe my ad revenue was less than $20, but it was close. And, that was in 2008. And I still remember how embarrassed I felt inside after that call. And looking back, 20 years later, I think that I should have probably done like the what you can control and what you can't control circles, like cable negotiations at Time Warner and VH1 was pretty far out of my realm of control, right? So that was number one, is like, take note, right? I think the second thing is that maybe instead of making a phone call, I should have like came with an alternative plan. Like, maybe my blog post could have been an articulated point about the contractual violation that I felt in that moment, versus a phone call to probably underpaid, at least, customer service rep at Time Warner. And to be completely candid, they didn't speak English, so it just made the whole thing more embarrassing. Like, clear English, like clear enough English to really grasp what I was saying. So I'm sure I just sounded like a psychopath to these people. And then the thing I regret the most is like, be kind. Oh my God. Like, that poor person. They had nothing to do with this. Nothing. And I think I wouldn't let them hang up with me. Like, I was like, I am paying you. I think I asked for a refund of the day too. Like, if you don't show it, I get a refund for that one day. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so, had I been kind and like stayed calm and measured and regulated and realized the lack of control everyone in this scenario had, I think I would have not been talking about it 20 years later.
That is a great story. And Rock of Love, oh man, those were the days.
I know.
Those were the days. My Once Upon a Karen story starts out like any good story at Jimmy Buffett's Cheeseburger in Paradise. Now, if you haven't been to a Cheeseburger in Paradise, it's based off of Jimmy Buffett's song Cheeseburger in Paradise, where he lists off all the different ingredients that go on a burger to make this cheeseburger in paradise. And so this is just a little burger shack. I don't know if they're still around anymore. They used to be around. I see more Margaritavilles now, so maybe they got kind of absorbed in the Margaritaville bucket. But it was just its standard kind of sit down burger joint. And I went there once with my mom and sister. And I forget what it was, but there was some type of conversation I needed to have with my mom at lunch. And I was already like amped. You know, when you walk into a situation, you're already like amped up, ready to go. I was amped. Okay. And we get into this cheeseburger in paradise and it's like 11:30. They open at 11. There's literally no one there and they refuse to seat us. Like they're like, oh, we just need a few more minutes before we'll see you guys. So like, okay, fine. 5 minutes, fine. 10 minutes, fine. 15 minutes, like it's getting like not fine, right? And I'm getting increasingly amped because I need to sit down to have this conversation. I can't just have it in the chairs at the front of the Cheeseburger in Paradise. I need to be in the booth to have it. Okay. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me why. So I'm amped up. All right. And I'm getting more and more irritated because they're not seating us. And I remember my mom being like, it's okay. Just like calm down. And that was the moment. That was the moment that I lost it. I lost it. And I went up to the hostess and I said, you all have lost Cheeseburger in Paradise customers today for not sitting us. And then I turned around and I grabbed my family and I stomped out. And we went to the Panera across the street. Well, I embarrassed everybody. Everybody was upset because nobody wanted Panera. Everybody wanted Cheeseburger in Paradise. And honestly, the type of conversation we needed to have, again, I don't remember the details, but I just did not feel comfortable having it at Panera. So it was like a really uncomfortable lunch and it just left a really bad memory. And I'm really sorry I freaked out on that hostess. I've been a hostess. Like it is a hard job to be the front of establishment. And I'm sure like she wasn't just keeping us from our table. I'm sure there was some other thing going on, but I was not patient enough or regulated enough in that moment to get it. Mm-hmm. So I had very messy behavior, things I could have done differently to not be so messy. Well, the first thing I could have done is probably recognize that if I needed to have a conversation with my mom that intensely, we didn't need to wait until we were at the booth at Cheeseburger in Paradise. We probably could have just had that at home privately, the two of us. So there's that. Number two, I could have recognized what I just said, that the hostess probably has limited control over the situation. And it wasn't necessarily her fault, and I didn't need to project my anger onto her. And the final thing I could have done differently is I could have just prioritized enjoying Cheeseburger in Paradise. That could have just been the main event that day, And I wish it was, because I'm not sure. I don't think I ever went back to a Cheeseburger in Paradise, and I don't think they're a thing. So I feel like I missed out on an opportunity. My dysregulation got ahead of me and I was a total Karen in that moment. And it is funny. I mean, it's been 15 years. I still I do not feel good about it in my gut. And I hear that same in your story too.
Oh, I mean, it sticks with you. And I mean, I think the things that we're talking about are hilarious. Let's face it, right? These are but we can see how dysregulation hangover is a thing. It's a
so
real thing because these are funny stories, but I mean, I'm sure I could come up with one that's heavy from family,
that are not so funny,
aren't so funny, that have major consequences. And so, if you're capable of doing to a hostess, or in my case, a Time Warner customer service rep, you're capable of doing to anyone. And the hangover is rough, which is why I think what we're doing by bringing a movement of emotionally endurant people that are ready to show up regulated is so important, because I still am not proud of that moment at all.
No, me neither. And part of the reason we wanted to do this game is because we would like to work to give people the opportunity to reflect on their Karen-like behavior and not judge themselves for it, but instead, well, I guess we are judging ourselves a little bit, but instead of just staying in this cycle of shame, to actually think about
Right.
like, how have I grown? What have I done differently? I think we are all Karens from time to time. And it usually stems from us feeling out of control in one area of our life and then taking that anxiety, anger, irritation, outrage out on people that don't deserve it. And there's a contagion effect. I
Yeah.
think that Time Warner rep could have gone home to his family and had a fight with his wife because of his bad day at work. That hostess could have decided that she no
Mhm.
longer wanted to work for Jimmy Buffett Industries and I don't know, probably did something better with her life. But you get what I'm saying.
Well, and I think, I mean, I think the other thing is if you have children, especially, it's modeling behavior. There's study
Yes.
after study after study that says really the biggest thing that we pass on to our children, the most universal and most comprehensive result of longitudinal studies about childhood development and what parents influence, the number one thing is how we treat people. And so we don't want to be dysregulated to Time Warner. We don't want to be dysregulated to that hostess because if we have children around us, we are modeling those behaviors. So when they're in those situations, they think that's acceptable. So I think in these situations, we both learned. I now, and it's been a long time, I still say, I know I'm getting extremely frustrated, and this is not directed at you. And I'm very sorry if I am getting amped up. I'm just very frustrated. I try so hard to make sure I tell the customer service rep because the reality is I'm going to get pissed. We're going to get pissed at people. And it is hard to keep, I mean, without my son, when I try not to yell at him, I'm patronizing. So it's like finding that balance or just being transparent. Like, I want Time Warner to dissolve and liquidate, which I think they did. I mean, in that capacity in this region.
I think they just rebranded to Spectrum because everybody was complaining about Time
Yeah,
Warner
that's
so
one
much.
way to deal with your problems.
Their
too.
brand got shrinked.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's a little harder as a person to rebrand.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that because I had a situation. My daughter was with me earlier this week. I had a situation that I went to go return something and they were giving me a real hard time to the point that I was like, okay, I will leave and come back with this random thing that I need to have to return this item. And I was getting really frustrated. And I mean, like the lady was like apologizing and stuff. And I kept it together and I was like, I mean, it's not your fault. I'll be back. I think I probably showed irritation, but I didn't take it out on her. And I think that's another thing we need to kind of normalize is like you can have emotional expression and not be a Karen. I think a lot of times people are like worried that any type of feeling reads that way. It really reads that way when you're dysregulated and you're taking your feelings out on somebody who is either not involved or is not culpable the way that you are trying to make them culpable.
Yep.
And you're right. Absolutely. Showing our kids what it means to stay regulated in tough moments is a huge part of how we prepare them to be happy, healthy, well humans into adulthood because the triggers don't stop. They're going to be upset because there's their version of Rock of Love, which God only knows what that'll be.
Oh, I don't even want to think about it. But and also, I mean, there is also another major component about it. It's that you have better outcomes.
Yes, that's the key. My grandma always used to say, you get more flies with honey than with vinegar. Now, fun fact, scientifically, that's actually untrue. But in life, I find it to be really true.
But I do find it to be true. If you call and collaborate with a customer service rep versus attack them, you get much farther, much quicker. So for those that haven't gotten dysregulated from those calls, good for you. Those that have, get off that train.
Hey, Crimson, you get another. Actually, I'm going to say 2,700 points now, just because I am such a fangirl of Rock of Love. And I remember the vlogging. I remember that. Oh my gosh, that finale of Rock of Love. Like we had like a party, I think, if I remember correctly, like a watch party.
Okay, so
like,
when I was telling,
socially,
when I was telling the story, I wanted to ask you, Were you around? Like, I feel like you
Yeah,
had to
I
have
was
been
around for the
around.
watch party, which is why you got an extra 200 points because it was a slap-in watch party.
Well, and no
I think it
wonder,
still would have been even if we couldn't watch the thing.
but no wonder why I felt the pressure. It wasn't just my $20 a week in Google ads.
It was also your
It
social
was my,
collateral.
we were, I mean, so for those that don't know, Lori and I got to live in the same building in downtown Cincy. And it was really fun. And so, and we both like having parties. And so, I kind of came up with a lot of excuses for parties, I think. So it totally makes sense
Yeah.
that I would have been like, Rock of Love finale, party time.
Let's do it.
That show was absolute trash that I loved.
Trash.
Oh, I mean,
Lovable
I
trash.
think, so when I was trying to find a picture for this episode, I ended up on I don't some streaming service like VH1 has a website or something. And there were episodes and I clicked and it like triggered so many memories and I'm like, I wonder how offended I would be watching this today.
So, oh, it would be either way or like no feeling at all. There would be no middle ground.
Right. Like I just feel like a lot of things probably happen that in today's world we'd be like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
A lot of things happened on that show that are probably
Questionable.
quite questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Lori, I am going to give you 1,000 points because you know what? You gave up a cheeseburger in paradise, and I can't give you more than 1,000 because anyone's gonna give up a cheeseburger in paradise.
Yeah.
You missed out. You missed out an opportunity.
I like my cheeseburger
I should give
with
you
a lot
less,
of regulation.
but staying regulated with your daughter, I'm gonna, keep you a little elevated.
What's the song like? It's like I like mine with French fried potatoes, a side of regulation, and avocado. Is that how it goes?
Sure. It won't shock you to know that I've never even heard. I mean, like, I have no idea what cheeseburger
Oh,
is.
you heard Cheeseburger
I
in
heard
Paradise
cheeseburger,
because we were
yes,
at
I know.
Margaritaville and all we heard, they have their own radio station
Mhm.
dialed in at all times to the Buffett catalog. So I know not only did you hear that song, you heard it ad nauseum for
Oh
3
my
days
God.
straight.
A secret about Margaritaville. The employees will not talk bad about Jimmy Buffett music. Like, I think I asked 3 or 4 employees and like a fun, like, ooh, nobody's around. Do you ever get tired of listening to Jimmy Buffett? And all of them, well, maybe one kind of giggled, but all of them were unrelenting in their love for it. So,
I think the closest we got to a negative comment was the guy who was like, yeah, well, when I'm in the van by myself, I turn it down.
yeah.
But if clients are here, we're back up.
Yeah. That was a college student too. So kudos to him. But yeah, that was a little bit more Jimmy Buffett and I had never really heard him before, so it was interesting.
I actually went to a Jimmy Buffett concert, and that's another story for another time. But dang,
Maybe soon.
bends to the left, people. Bends to the right. Bends up. Bends down.
And
Bends all around. All right, that's it for this week's episode of the Emotional Endurance Movement. If outrage showed up for you this week, here's the reminder. The goal isn't to suppress it. The goal is to regulate it well enough to decide what to do with it. Outrage can burn bridges, and it can also fuel change. And the difference, as always, is how we cope with it.
thanks for joining us at the Emotional Endurance Movement. And please subscribe if you're watching us. Subscribe on YouTube and make sure to sign up for our newsletter at sprouting-change.com/join us. And take our survey weekly. We will send you an email with a reminder so you can participate because be part of the show, be part of the fun because we're here to make a more regulated world. And if you're here now, you want to be part of this movement with us. So subscribe.
If this episode landed, take a second to like, subscribe, or share it with someone who's been feeling a little fired up lately. And don't forget to join our newsletter and take next week's survey. Your responses shape what we cover next. Until then, Tend the fire when it matters, contain it when that serves you, and keep building your emotional endurance. We'll see you next week.
Peace out.